Solidarity comrades, welcome back. Connor here, of course. It's been a long time since we've done part one of Black and Red, the role of communists in the Black liberation struggle. We started off in the last one, which I will link below if you haven't seen it, with the first part of the African Blood Brotherhood. Today, we are going to read part two, the Communist Party and the Scottsboro Youth. So, like I said, I will link part one in the description below, and then we will, we'll continue with part three next time. I will be releasing other things in between now and then. I also plan on iterating imperialism and the split in socialism, which is on the Second International split of the split of the Second International. I'm going to have that with more comments on it because I'm more qualified to talk about that. I'm not really qualified to talk about the Black liberation struggle, but yeah, we are going to continue with the Party of Communists USA published, New Outlook Publishers published, Black and Red, the role of communists in the Black liberation struggle. And on the first page of the part two, the Communist Party and the Scottsboro Youth, we have the 8 of the 9 Scottsboro Youth here. So we're going to talk about that now. From Harry Haywood, Black Bolsheviks, Chapter 12, White Chauvinism Under Fire. On March 25th, 1931, a freight train crowded with young people hoboing from Chattanooga to Memphis in search of work passed through Paint Rock, Alabama. 9 black youths were pulled off by the local sheriff and his deputies, charged with raping 2 white girls who happened to be riding in the same freight train. The 9 were Charles Weems, age 20, Clarence Norris, 19, Haywood Patterson, 17, Ozzie Powell, 14, Eugene Williams, 13, Olin Montgomery, 17, Andy Wright, 18, Willie Robinson, 15, and Roy White, 13. The situation was made in order for the local henchmen of Alabama's ruling oligarchy. The economic crisis had struck deeply into the entire region of northern Alabama, an area mainly small, family-sized farms, and a few textile mills. Many of its largely white population were facing evictions and repossessions of tools and livestock by the banks. In the textile mills, layoffs were throwing many out of work, but the sizable black population in the area suffered even greater hardships. Moving with lightning speed, the local authorities of Paint Rock lost no time in exploiting the case. The boys were taken to Scottsboro, the county seat, where they were arraigned, indicted, tried, and found guilty of rape in a period of less than 3 weeks. The trial began on April 6th and ended on the 10th, with the sentencing of 8 boys to death in the electric chair. The case of the 9th victim, Roy White, was declared a mistrial. The prosecution had requested life imprisonment in the view of his youth, he was 13, but the jury returned deadlock with 7 jurors insisting on the death penalty. The trial was carried through in a lynch atmosphere. On the day it opened, mobs of white natives from the surrounding countryside and towns surged around the courthouse. A band was playing "There'll Be a Hot Time in the Old Town Tonight." The National Guard had been called out ostensibly to preserve order and prevent the mob from attacking the boys. One of the youths, however, was bayoneted by a guardsman. It was the new style legal lynching carried through with the cooperation of the courts and law enforcement agencies. It was intended to guarantee the mob the same result as it would be obtained in an old-fashioned burning and hanging in a public square, the death of the victims. The courtroom farce at Scottsboro was a part of a wave of racist terror sweeping the South, which had resulted in 10 known lynchings in the past 3 months. Clearly, its purpose was to keep the N-word in his place and to prevent unity of blacks and poor whites, in other words, to divert the unrest of black and white workers into channels of interracial strife. This aim received open and brutal expression by the governor of Texas, Ross Sterling, an arrogant spokesman of the racist rulers of the South. Speaking of the case in his state, he stated, "It may be that this boy is innocent, but it is sometimes necessary to burn down a house in order to save a village." The Chattanooga Negro Ministers Alliance retained Stephen R. Roddy, reportedly a member of the Ku Klux Klan, as a defense attorney. His defense amounted to little more than pleading for life imprisonment instead of the death penalty. The NAACP kept a low profile on the case, as they were not sure the boys were innocent and they wanted to avoid possibly associating with being identified with mass rapists. This was their official justification for holding back from the case. Quote, "The NAACP is not an organization to defend black criminals. We are not in the field to condone rape, murder, and theft because it is done by black men. When we hear that 8 colored men have raped 2 white girls in Alabama, we are not first in the field to defend them. If they are guilty and have a fair trial, the case is none of our business. It was only when confronted with the dispatch of the ILD, International Labor Defense, and the communists in taking up the case, and with widespread outcry against the legal lynching in all sections of the black population, that the NAACP belatedly tried to enter the case and force the communists out." An example of right opportunism. We communists viewed the case in a much broader class terms. First, we assumed the boys were innocent, victims of a typical racist frame-up. Second, it was a lyncher's court. No one innocent or guilty could have a fair trial in such a situation. From the beginning, we called for a mass protest against the social crime being acted out by Wall Street's Bourbon hitchmen in the South. On April 2nd, the Daily Worker called for protests to free the boys. Again, on April 4th, the Southern Worker carried an article that characterized the case as a crude frame-up. From Harry Haywood, Black Bolsheviks, Chapter 13, Class Warfare in the Mines. It is difficult to fully assess the tremendous impact Scottsboro had on the party's political development in that period. Every area of work, every mass organization we were involved in was strengthened by our participation in the defense campaign. Through our militant working class policy, we were able to win the workers of all nationalities to take up the special demands of black people embodied in the Scottsboro defense. I'll never forget how the immigrant workers in the needle trade union would sing "Scottsboro Boys Shall Not Die" in their various Eastern European and Yiddish accents. In the South, the movement awakened the great mass of the black peasantry and resulted in the building of the militant Sharecroppers Union, which embraced thousands of land-starved black croppers and poor farmers. Scottsboro helped pave the way for the growth of the unemployed councils and the CIO. The International Labor Defense, ILD, which had been initiated by the party in 1925 to fight for the freedom of political prisoners like Tom Mooney and Warren Billings, became the main mass organization in Scottsboro. The Mooney case, and others like it, were linked to the Scottsboro frame-up and became instrumental in winning white workers to the fight for the freedom of the Scottsboro boys. And I will show you the picture of some people demonstrating for the Scottsboro boys to set them free, which is amazing. Scottsboro marked the first real bid of the party and the black working class for the leadership in the black liberation struggle. Within the national movement, black workers emerged as a force independent of the reformists, greatly strengthened by their role as a part of the working class generally by the end of 1931, and we had effectively won hegemony over the defense efforts. Although the NAACP did not formally withdraw from the defense until January 1932, we were already in de facto control. The boys and their parents have signed up with the ILD. This is a subnote. All but the youngest defendant, Roy White, who was 12 years old, were initially sentenced to death. All spent many years in jail until they finished their sentences or paroled. So, given the time that we have here on that second part, I'm going to read the this next part as well, because it's not very long and it will be very enjoyable and very informative. So we are on to another section of the book, and we'll include this in the second part. Section 3: Angelo Harnden and the fight for unemployment insurance in the South. And here is a picture of Angelo Harnden in the center, Robert Minor left, and James Ford. These are the people we're talking about. And this is also a section from Harry Haywood's Black Bolshevik, Chapter 14, Reunion in Moscow. In the summer of 1932, 19-year-old Angelo Harnden, a YCL member, Young Communist League, which was the old Communist Party's youth league that was dissolved in 2015, and the Party of Communist USA upholds the legacy of that organization in our youth wing, which is the YLC, the Young League of Communists. Anyway, in the summer of 1932, 19-year-old Angelo Harnden, a YCL member, was arrested in Atlanta, Georgia. Harnden was charged with incitement to insurrection under an old 1861 fugitive slave statute. Much of what I learned from my brother Otto, who was in Atlanta at the time and worked actively in the campaign. That June, the Fulton County Commissioners had announced that there was no more money for his relief. After all, there was no need for relief, they said. There was no one in the city of Atlanta who was starving. Then they invited any stray soul who might be hungry to come to their offices, and they would investigate the situation. The Communist Party and the unemployed councils immediately took them up on their offer. They mobilized 1,000 people, black and white, to come to the county courthouse and demand relief. The meeting itself was historic, the first time that such a large meeting of black and white workers had taken place in the South. Harnden describes its significance in his autobiography. Quote, "It was a demonstration of Southern worker power, like a giant that had been lying asleep for a long time. He now began to stir." End quote. Atlanta's ruling circles were appropriately alarmed. The next day they found $6,000 for relief. 1 week later, Angelo Harnden was arrested. His trial was an example of Georgia lynch justice, and the local rulers through their newspaper were to use it in the sensationalized the Red Jew scare for many years to come. I think the prosecutor's remarks sum up the situation pretty well. Falling to his knees, the Reverend Hudson, the prosecutor, told the jury that he expected them to arrive to a verdict that would automatically send this damnable anarchist Bolsheviki to his death by electrocution. The good reverend said that this would satisfy God, and that, quote, daughters of the state officials can walk the streets safely, stamping this thing out now with a conviction, end quote. Hudson didn't get everything he asked for, but Harnden was sentenced to 18 to 20 years. Before he was sentenced, however, young Harnden told the court, quote, you may succeed in killing 1, 2, even a score of working-class organizers, but you cannot kill the working class, end quote. In the beginning stages of the ILD, in the beginning stages of the case, the ILD had immediately taken charge of the defense, which was then in the hands of a young black Atlanta attorney, Ben Davis Jr. The case was linked up with the Scottsboro struggle as a symbol of the racist prosecution of blacks. A long legal battle ensued, mass meetings, and huge petition campaigns were launched as a part of the defense effort. The case was fought through to the Supreme Court, which at first sustained the conviction, but ultimately reversed it by a 5-4 decision. Harnden, out on bail, was finally freed in 1937. That is the end of Section 3, very short one. We'll continue in Part 3 of Black and Reds, the role of communists in the Black liberation struggle, with Section 4, organization of the Sharecroppers Union. But for now, I want to thank you all for watching. I will have a link. Again, I'll have a link below to the first part. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and like. And if you feel the need to donate to, or for any reason to me, I'll leave a link to the party website down below, and you can donate to the Party of Communists, because that is the best place to put this money. If you want to support this channel, then support the Party of Communists USA. Solidarity, comrades, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.